Welcome back to the show, everybody. As much as I would love to open the space back up, the paint on everything is just a little bit too soft yet. So we'll give this one more day, and then we can start throwing some of these bulky items on, clear out the shop a little bit here. In the meantime, reconditioning of components has been underway. A minor piece, that's the clutch release bearing grease tube access plate right there. I refurbed the throttle, so this is, it looks like an aftermarket M&W throttle. H has had that tooth notched setup. This one's always been the friction style, and I do like those better. I had to put a new center bolt in it, new nylock nut, and I made a new friction disc for between the pivots. The whole time I had it, it was just running metal on metal. So that's just a piece of rubber impregnated cork in there. Nothing really special. And then the bracket for the hydraulic control rod, I threw a new rivet and lever spring, detent spring in there. The old one had been broken ever since I had the tractor, and that's the old rivet right there. So just a few minor pieces to start the process over again. Now a major piece. It's time to kick the board that's on the floor, and then it's time to get into the front bolster here. I am going to reseal it. We have a seal right here and another seal up in there, and we have 3 new bushings. There's one right there, there's one in here, and then the main one down there at the bottom. Here's the kit. All the new ones look good. Even comes with the grease passage hole in it. This is the upper shaft, and that's the worm shaft input. So let's get to it. So let's dig this first seal out of there. It's in there tight. There we go. And now we'll use the driver to drift that bushing out. We'll see how tight it is. It's moving already. Up next now, we've got the oil seal that's all the way down here, all right? And it would probably be driven out with the bushing, but I want to take that seal out first. And I'm going to see if I can get in there with this kind of hooked end bar. Yeah, get behind the lip and drive it out that way. Yep. Oh, I forgot. I had put a double seal in there last time. Okay. Using the driver once again, let's take this bushing out next. These really haven't put up too much of a fight so far. Okay, so I dropped the driver as well, but there's our second bushing. All right, everybody, we're working from the bottom side now. Get you all off the cameraman pole here. And this bushing had dropped on me once before, and I didn't have the means to go and try and redo it at the time, so all I did, I believe I took it out, Loctited it, and just hammered it back in. And I tried tapping on it from the top, and it seemed pretty solid. So what I'm going to do, it's got this like the split in it down here. So I'm just going to get under it with a like a sharp point chisel. See if I can't start peeling it up. You can see I've kicked up a little bit of it right there. See if we can get that split opened up so it collapses, and then you should be able to pull it right out. That split loosened it right up. You can just pull it out with pliers now. And the green stuff on there, you see it in there as well. I am a believer, once again, this is a Permatex brand number 64,000 high strength sleeve retainer. That's what I hammered this back in with back in the day, because it had dropped and was no longer even a press fit. And I threw that stuff on there and just hammered it back in. That's been, how many years was that? That would have been about 2012-ish that I did that. That thing held tight ever since. Amazing stuff. So we are officially stripped. Time to clean this entire casting. That's going to take a little bit of time. We're approaching dusk outside right now. I think I'm going to haul that out in the morning. We'll clean this up and we'll start putting new parts back in it. Okay, everybody, that's how you turn 2 hours of really nasty, dirty, dusty work into 10 seconds of video footage. So we need to take note of the grease passage that goes from, I pulled the Zerk out because we're going to put new ones in, but from out here and feeds all the way into the bushing hole. So I've thrown a square in there, made a mark at the top of the bore, and I have made a corresponding, get it straight, dude, line down the bushing, centering out where the hole is. We just need to align that hole with the passage opening. We'll be pretty good. I don't know if y'all remember the Super M, but when I was into the Bolster on that one, I found that this bushing had been replaced, but they had just put it in with the hole way off to the side, and that's why we could never get grease into there. And I think the only thing that saved that tractor was the fact that it was a wide front end, so all the weight of the machine was not solely on that pedestal and pushing on this bushing here. This is a split bushing design, and you can see it collapses rather easily. And I know we have a slightly belled out bore in here because that last bushing had dropped down years and years ago. And I'm able to start it in by hand. So we are going to use, here it is. This is live, folks. That Permatex high temp sleeve retainer, I swear by this stuff. That's what I secured the old one in with. We're going to do it all over again. Check down that grease passage. Yes, I can see all the way down to the bottom, so that's lined in well. Our split seam gap closed right up. That didn't pound in super tight, but I think it's going to be all right. We need 1 hour for that sleeve retainer to set, 24 hours to full strength. I actually went in tighter than the old one, and you saw how I had to chisel that old one out, so I think we'll be just fine. Upper bushing now, and we just drive this one in until it flushes out with the top of the opening. Flipped back over once again. Now we're working down on the bottom of where we just drove that bushing in. We need to install the grease seal. I had obtained this SKF 12427 for that purpose. That's the correct size, but they also included one in with that bushing kit. So I'm just going to double them up once again like I had it before. I just packed the lip of the seal with grease back in behind so that that ensures whichever seal is not directly in contact with all the grease that's up in that steering quadrant still stays lubricated on the lip. This is one of those jobs where there's just no good way to show this because the opening's completely covered up by my hand, but at least with the H I can get the seal started into the bore by hand. The Super M, you actually have a slightly larger opening, but it's too far up. I was not able to reach it, so I just had to balance that one on the driver And with everything upright, of course, try and get that in that way. Back up to the top, worm shaft bushing. Now, this one also has a hole in the side of it, but there's nothing in here that needs to be aligned with. It might be that this was also used in a different application that needed a passage feeding in. That's what I'm assuming. But we can just drive this one in however it lands. No worries about this one loosening up. Wow. And finally, the worm shaft seal, SKF 9876. Okay, everybody, upside down for the last time. We'll finish up by assembling the manual hand crank. So it slides in from the back, and then we line it in with the hole that sticks out the front of the bolster, just like that. And you'll notice this flat washer is cotter pinned onto the shaft. That just acts as a stop so that it can't pull all the way out the front. And we're leaving all these pieces rather dry for now. I do like grease on things to keep them from rusting, but the Zerk is still out here. New Zerks will go in right here and on the front after it's all painted, and then we'll just shoot some grease in and just kind of lubricate everything that way. So we've got the claw sleeve, just start that right there. Then there's the spring, and we have the capturing washer for that. I do have a little bit of grease under there because I won't be able to get grease into that zone after it's all put together. So there we are. Slide it on there. Claw sleeve can go in. And we compress that spring until we can see the opening in the shaft through the opening in the claw sleeve. This pin then goes through, and then we can put the snap ring on. Snap right in place, and then that spring in the sleeve slides forward enough to capture the pin and plunges just fine, turns just fine. So final piece, the small cross pin goes out on the end of the shaft. Just drives in as a friction fit. I think I'm going to slide that in a little bit, offers a little bit more support. Without grease back there on that sleeve, there we are. It's a little bit sticky, but once I get grease back there after paint, it's all going to free up. Looks good. So we've got the front bolster ready for paint. That means it's time to clear out the pieces that are already painted, and we need to open up that cherry picker because that is going to be hanging off of it when it gets painted. So I buy corks by the hundreds because when I'm doing this type of work, I use quite a lot of them. So I'm setting up with fender brackets, extension brackets on the axle housings, and I always cork the unused holes because if I don't, they're just going to fill with dirt and water and rust. Everything else, they're also nice and clean right now. Might as well keep them that way. Fenders all in place. PTO shield next. With the shield on, that was the last of the loose parts. So the inner tubes for the front tires came in the other day. I got those remounted to the rims, so we might as well put those onto the pedestal. Another thing I did though was basically rotate these front tires because the narrow front ends have a lot of camber out at the top. That means the outer rib of the tire spends the most time on the ground, the inner rib hardly at all. So what I did with these tires was just flip them on the rims so that the inner rim is the one that was experiencing most of the wear from before, and the new outer rim is the one that used to be on the inside and has little to no wear. We just get the maximum amount of life out of the tires that way. And as long as we're on the topic of inner tubes, I found this lovely and helpful comment under episode number 12. He says, so you changed probably good quality USA under tubes for cheap Chinese tubes, as that's where they all come from now. Makes sense. And you will run into comments like this from time to time. It's not a big deal. You have two options. You can escalate, which it is the comment section after all. That seems to be standard procedure. Or you can choose to educate. I much prefer the latter. I still have the old inner tubes right here, and like I said, I replaced these about 15 years ago, and it made in Venezuela. They should both be the same because they were purchased at the same time from the same distributor. Yes, sir. And I don't know where these tubes were manufactured. Nothing was printed on them, nor the bag. Doesn't really matter to me either way. Rubber has a finite lifespan. The only time we get practical use out of rubber components, whether it is tires, inner tubes, belts, seals, is while the rubber is still in the curing process. And once rubber reaches a fully cured state, it is much less pliable, sometimes no longer pliable at all. And that's when it starts cracking and splitting, and it's basically no good. So whether the old inner tubes were made in Venezuela or Canada or China or Mexico, or I had crafted them off my own two hands, they were the oldest tubes on the tractor, and they would be getting replaced at this point anyway. So let's see how much of this paint we can scratch. I have to dodge this rim to the back side of the wheel center. Yep. And then we see how much fresh paint interferes with the fit. Okay, I think we're there. Is it going to stay? Ah, come on. There we are. The hardware on the inside, I chose not to paint because you see the coating still left on there. In the parts manual for the wheel bolts, it specified CAD, C-A-D, which I'm assuming the wheel bolts were not painted originally. So I basically decided to split the difference. We'll leave the original CAD coating on the inside, but I did paint the bolt heads. Mosquito. I did paint the bolt heads because I didn't want that standing out from the red wheel center. Wheels down. But wait, there's more. Second side now, and I'm going to do this one a little bit differently. We're going to use this guide bolt, much like I do with the rear weights, because doing the first one without it was a bit of a handful. So much easier already. This has been a much better method so far. All right, everybody, here's where we stand at the end of the day. H is looking really good. I like the fenders. I like the PTO shield. It's starting to take shape just a little bit more. I'm loving the front wheel weights. They just help those hubs to look mean. Really happy with all of that. We've got the Bolster masked and suspended. It's ready for paint. We have corked what will be the unused holes to keep them all clean. I went ahead and threw the Zerk fittings in. We're capped off where we need to be capped off. That's ready to receive full coat of paint. And I got a few more items prepped, just minor stuff prepped this afternoon. Some of the tree components, that's the starter switch housing. That's our amp meter / light switch housing. Bolts, hardware for that. Top to the bolster and everything else that we had ready to go there. And lots of other things we could do. So I think I'm going to do something similar to what I did last time when I was prepping a paint batch. I want to get all this stuff covered. I don't want to leave it raw, but we are kind of working with the weather. It looks like I might be able to take all day tomorrow still to prep more of a paint batch worth of parts. What we're looking at right now is the humidity factor. Temperature, we're plenty warm enough, and if I can get the painting done in the first half of the day, temperature really doesn't matter. We can get it done before it gets too hot outside, but the critical is the moisture level in the air. So going off of the weather report, I think we're good for another 2 days. So I think I'm just going to slam parts through the cleaning and reconditioning system all day tomorrow. And then the day after that, we'll be spraying the next coat of color. So that's what you can expect right here. I think that's going to be a nice looking tractor when we get it all done. Blah, blah, blah. Thank you for watching, everyone. Hope you tune in again.